Good afternoon, everyone. Today I am going to talk to you about the science of fertigation. The word simply means applying fertilizer through irrigation. Most of you know this, and many of you have been doing this for last several years. But fertigation, to do it correctly, precisely, to assist precision farming, there are certain steps we have to follow. And some of these steps are operational, some of the steps are theoretical. And these operational steps, we can teach, train the farmers to do it, or the technicians to do it. But the theoretical step has to be done prior to the operational steps by the provider company. That is why a drip irrigation company, a large drip irrigation company like Jain Irrigation, employs a number of people who are qualified to do this. And the company calls them agronomists. These agronomists are supposed to know the basics about plant nutrition and the entire science of fertigation. Today, using few slides, I'll be going through that basic part of it, a bit on the operation side, mostly on the theoretical side, how the fertigation is finally made to work in the field. I will not be touching much upon the equipment side because my colleagues in Jain Irrigation have already covered many of the things. I would be just touching upon things only. But this will be, we are talking about plant nutrition, the nutrients, then what provides the fertilizers, then what type of fertilizer actually required for fertigation, or mainly the water soluble fertilizers. And the major issue is that what is happening to Indian soils by our continuous use of chemical fertilizers and flow irrigation. Then I touch upon the very important topic called fertigation scheduling. When to apply fertilizer, how much to apply, and what mineral to apply. And then I will be showing some research which we have done in Jain Irrigation as well as in collaboration with others. Now, if you come to plant nutrition, plants requires a number of elements. Of this, carbon and oxygen and hydrogen is available in plenty in the nature. Carbon very limited in the soil. I'll come to that later. The fertilizer elements which farmers usually apply and the crop requires generally are nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. And the slide shows the condense is required if you have 30 gram of nitrogen per kg in the plant, that which means it is having sufficient. Like that phosphorus 4 gram per kg, it is sufficient. And there are a lot of other elements which we call the secondary elements as well as the micro elements, which comes together about 26 gram per kg. This is what it is. But whatever I said, it's only a theory part of it. It doesn't make any sense in the practical sense. Now, these nutrients which I listed already are applied as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and secondary elements sulfur, calcium, and magnesium. And the crop takes it up nitrogen as nitrate or ammonia, phosphorus as H2PO4 and HPO4, orthophosphate, potassium as potassium ion, K plus ion, and like that. Now, if you take a large number of plants and during their growth and analyze, especially those growing with a sufficient nutrition, you will see the macronutrient concentration when it is sufficient in the crop for its growth and development. Nitrogen comes about 2.5 to 4.5. This is the percentage. Phosphorus about 0.2 to 0.75, potassium 1.5 to 5.5. If you look at potassium, it's actually highly utilized. Large contents of potassium is utilized. Sulfur 0.25 to 1, calcium 1 to 4, and magnesium 0.25 to 1. These are the major primary nutrients and the secondary nutrients. Then we come to micronutrients. And in fact, many people working in agriculture, and many farmers sometimes don't even know that their crop requires micronutrients, because the old pressure put onto the farmers to use NPK, NPK, and NPK, more of that. So, but there are certain elements with small amounts. So that's why it is listed in ppm in the slide, parts per million or milligram per liter. Boron, for example, 10 to 200 ppm, vary according to various crops. Chloride, 100 to 500. Copper, iron, 100 to 500. Manganese, molybdenum, very small quantity, 0.1 to 2 ppm. And zinc. And many of you who are growing rice would know that zinc and iron are very critical for the crop growth. So we have 2 types. Now, here, when you start a crop, nobody knows. After doing everything right, you still may not get the potential yield of that crop. One of the main reasons, if you don't have insect or pest attack or things which are biological, then the major reason why the crop is not coming to its full yield potential is obviously shortage of some element. And so long back, this law of limiting factors was coined. If you look at the 2 cylinders I have given, we are talking about tomato yield. In the cylinder on your right side and my left side, you see it gets about 13 tons per hectare, very low yield of tomato for that matter. And then you see from the tank, the water is coming out at the lowest point, and the lowest point is potassium, which means why the tank cannot hold more yield is because potassium is less. So the tank is not complete. It is leaking there. So in other words, the crop cannot grow. So potassium is actually limiting there. And you go to the other side, where of course we applied potassium. Then we found at a later stage, magnesium becomes limited. So what I'm trying to say is that we may provide every nutrition element to the crop from time to time, but still there will be a hidden hunger which we may not know unless we analyze the plant and find out what is actually happening, why it is not growing, or why it is not giving enough yield or its targeted yield. This may be due to the hidden hunger of any one element, either primary, secondary, or even micronutrients, which became limited because of its absence throughout the crop's life or part of the crop's life. Now, this is what has to be done. So here, to identify what is exactly lacking in a growing crop, one has to take the tissue, especially the leaf tissue, and do the analysis and find out. But then many of them cannot do that. There are ways of understanding this by looking at the external symptoms, which for a trained eye, it's possible to find out whether potassium is limiting. But another thing I have to highlight here is that when you see a limitation externally expressed, the damage due to that limitation is already done. So we cannot, if a potassium deficient plant, we saw most of the leaves burning at the edges, and later we just go and apply some potassium, we may not be able to recover the full yield. So balancing comes from the original soil analysis and finding out what is lacking in my field. Now, how are we going to give this nutrients to the crop? Nutrients are through fertilizers. When I say fertilizers, don't jump to the conclusion that I'm talking about urea, potash, and all that. Fertilizers can be any substance. They contain one or more recognized plant nutrient, like nitrogen, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, or iron, or like that. These condense, and it is claimed to have, when you are testing these material, these should produce growth in the plant. They should promote growth. Then only it becomes a fertilizer. If you put something, somebody said something to put it, you will get it. If it is not promoting growth and the development, it is no longer a fertilizer. Now let us classification. These are information, you already know it. But To tell you a whole story, I need to touch upon them. There are fertilizers, organic types, plant origin type, biological fertilizers. They are inorganic type, then biofertilizers, organisms, small organisms, algal, fungal, mycorrhizal. These are biofertilizers. Organic manures, we all know FOIM, very bulky, but their nutrient content will be less, but they add a lot of roughage, which is basically mainly carbon and all that to the soil. You have compost, you have concentrated ones in that, oil cakes, neem oil cake, castor oil cake, even blood, animal blood from the abattoir is manure only. Green manures, we grow sometime before harvest, after harvesting one crop, before we go into the thing, second crop. In interim, we take about 2 months, 3 months, or even 1 month a crop like sunham, and many of the pulses like cowpea or green manure. They add nutrients to the soil. That's why they're called green manure. Now we classify, we have nitrogenous fertilizers, urea, ammonium sulfate, you have phosphatic, single superphosphate is a well-known fertilizer used in India. You have potassium fertilizers, which is potassium MOP, muriate of potash, or SOP, sulfate of potash. Then you have a lots of complex fertilizers. These are complex in the factory. You are not doing it your own. DAP, diammonium phosphate, monoammonium phosphate, potassium nitrate, monopotassium phosphate. These are some of them. Then you have micronutrients, which are comes as zinc sulfate, borax, iron sulfate, and all that. Then you have a series of non-fertilizer but chemicals added to the soil as soil amendments, gypsum. When you have high alkalinity in the soil, we add gypsum. Then we have biofertilizers, which are organisms, as I said, acetobacter, rhizobium, and phosphorate solubilizing bacteria, which is coming in the series of single-celled biofertilizers. Now, let us look at, there are straight fertilizers for our knowledge, because urea is a straight fertilizer, just contains nitrogen. Then the phosphate, superphosphate contains phosphate. Main element is phosphorus. It also contains some sulfur. Then you have muriate of potash, it is potash. Then complexes are there, different complexes are available. 18, 18, 10, 10, 26, 26, 17, 17, 17, very popular. Then you have mixed ones, where DAP is mixed plus urea at certain proportion. Now, the important thing is that all the fertilizer we apply in large quantities into the field do not have only mineral used by the crop. So fertilizers have something called a carriers. See, for example, urea, it has only 46.4% nitrogen. Ammonium sulfate, 20% nitrogen. Calcium ammonium nitrate, 15% nitrogen. Then you have phosphatics, superphosphate 16%, muriate of potash 60%. Like that, you take potassium nitrate, 0.46 units of nitrogen, and 46 units of potash. Yes. So these are the fertilizers farmers are familiar with, and they have been using year after year. And we call them, for this discussion part, we call them conventional fertilizers, because I'm going to talk about something else later, which are not so conventional. Usually we apply 2 or 3 splits during the crop life cycle. When we are applying, we apply large quantities like 50 kg, or in the farmer's language, 2 bags, which is 100 kg, like that. And these are not completely water soluble. Usually fertilizer is applied, then irrigation, flow irrigation follows that actually, to make the fertilizer dissolve in water, ionize it into minerals in the plant absorbable form. There is a process going on in the soil at that. And many of these fertilizers contain sodium and chloride, which are not at all preferred to be there in the soil much, because they harm the plants. And resultant to all this method of application of dry fertilizer into the soil and then irrigation, or that we do not get a uniform distribution across the different parts of the field. So there is no uniformity. And placement is also not correct. Fertilizer may be lying somewhere, the roots and the root hairs, which absorb the fertilizer, are somewhere else. Okay. And chemically, there is another issue. Fertilizers like phosphorus and potassium, they get fixed chemically, are bound to chemicals in the soil and they may not be able to come out of it. Potassium, for example, not only to chemically, they get bound by clay elements, the clay lattice structure. That's why when you apply too much potassium, most of them goes for fixation. It's not available to the crop. And the resultant of all these fixation and non-utilization by the crop instantly of the applied fertilizer, the soil deteriorates. You make the soil more salt loaded or saline. And we get about 30 or 40 or 50% fertilizer use efficiency. 100 kg you apply, you get worth of 40 kg. And the another thing about the conventional fertilizers, they are made in such a way into complex molecules. Their nutrients are not easily available to the crop. And many of them have pH which is more than 7, 7.5, which means they are turning towards alkaline. And when there are large chunks of Indian soil, central Indian soils, states, are all alkaline soils. So you are adding to the alkalinity. And there is another interesting thing. Urea is most commonly used. Later you will see that how disproportionately we are using urea. And in case of urea, nitrogen is lost if your water management is flooding the field. And it also lost volatilization if you don't irrigate on time, because urea as such will get evaporated. And then it also goes by leaching down. One of the major things with these fertilizers and the conventional mode of applied splitting 3-4 is that these fertilizer application timings and the crop demand, peak demand timings would have no parallel, no relationship at all. People are applying some basic thing, then after 15 days or after 1 month or after 2 months, they do that. This is basically purely on a calendar basis and not on the crop's growth stage basis. This is one of the major disadvantages actually created fertilizers not giving the potential yield in India. Now let us look at our soils, look at some history of this and our way of nutrient addition. Now this is a very frightening map for a person who is in the field of agriculture, the farmer or a scientist. It's actually done by Coromandel in their internal work. They took about 3.4 lakh samples of soil and analyzed for organic carbon, what we call in our soil test OC. You see, just to summarize it, states like West Bengal, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab are extremely poor, the soils are, for carbon. Now you may ask me, why do we need carbon? I have urea, I keep on adding urea. Please understand, even the urea's nitrogen availability to the crop happens only if there is sufficient organic carbon in the soil. There is something called a carbon to nitrogen ratio which you have to maintain. When you add more urea, you are getting more nitrogen and proportionately lesser carbon. Crops will have to suffer. Now, to summarize it, 67% of Indian soils have very low organic carbon. Very low organic. This is actually a very frightening thing for the Indian agriculture. Now we look at the deteriorating balance of NPK. NPK have to be at certain balance. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium that we apply. But look at this data. Over a period of time, we were having 4.32:1 NPK around 2010. Just in 3 years, this is some data from the government website, Ministry of Agriculture, Union Government. It has moved to almost double nitrogen, but P has not doubled. P has 3.2, and sadly, K is sitting with 1. So basically what happens is that farmers, because of the availability issue, as well as the cost issue, they buy with the cheapest fertilizer, which happen to be urea, compared to potash, and they keep on adding. Because their belief is that give this more, you get more. It doesn't happen. It not only doesn't happen in terms of yield, it deteriorates the soil. And this nitrogen, excess nitrogen, as nitrate, will get washed through the running water from the field to field, finally end into your water channels, your lakes, rivers, and sometimes, and also because the leaching, it gets into your groundwater. So it only spoils, it pollutes soil, it pollutes water. And that is another reason why we get low productivity per unit fertilizer. I will show you that also. Now we look at this efficiencies I'm talking about, nutrient efficiencies. Nitrogen has got 30 to 40% efficiency only. Where are the other amounts which we are applying? They go to immobilize. They get immobilized in the soil, or part of them will get volatilized. They escape into the air. Denitrification takes place and leaching takes place. All these will remove that nitrogen from the root vicinity, so plants can't take them. Phosphorus 15-20. One of the main problems with the phosphorus, they get fixed with the aluminum, iron, calcium in the soil, chemically fixed. You cannot change it unless you go with the chemical reaction in the soil with acids, which is you can't do it in a crop field. Potassium 70 to 80%. That's slightly better in terms of efficiency, but they also get into in clay soil, they get into the clay lattices. If you apply, all this happens because you are applying too much quantity at one time. That's the point. It's not that whether you know how much is required for the crop. You are assuming that if I give more at one time, it will stay in the soil and the crop will take as and when it requires. That doesn't happen. Sulfur, immobilization, leaching with water, and a lot of micronutrients which also get fixed in soil. Now, this is what I was trying. Then, so what happened is that from 1970 to 2000, again, government study, they have plotted the response ratio kilogram grains per kilogram NPK. You saw that. In 1970, we were in a reasonable, comfortable position. 13.4 kilogram of grain is produced per kg of NPK used. But now, less than 3.7. You're applying the same fertilizer. You have the same land. You might have divided the land into your son and daughter, but the land is the same. But the soil is not the same. That's a problem. The boundaries of the land, the lay of the land, everything will be the same. But the soil is not so. Soil has gone from bad to worse situation. So applying fertilizer, and probably from 1970 to 2010 or beyond 2020, I'm very sure farmers will be applying more fertilizer than probably what they applied in 1970 because their economic conditions improved. They have access, and governments using Kisan Card and other loan facilities and all that, governments are also providing, and there's huge subsidy on the fertilizer. Fertilizer is available. So you keep adding more and more into the soil, but the return is not so much. That's why the efficiency is becoming less. This is especially in irrigated areas. So finally, we come into, by all these soil health issues, which has been an accumulated number of error or fallacies or wrongdoings, now has depleted soil organic matter. That's why carbon is less. Imbalance in fertilizer, and day by day, year by year, the imbalance is increasing, more towards nitrogen, less towards others. The emerging multi-nutrient, and then finally happened was that in many soils, you have one or the other types of nutrient deficiencies, iron deficiency, zinc deficiency, like that. Declining nutrient use efficiency, which you already saw, declining crop response ratio, which means crop gives you less and less per unit fertilizer you apply. This leads to the soils now, if you look at it, have a negative soil nutrient balance, despite year by increase in adding nutrients to the soil. This is something people with agriculture background and sense, and even the administrators who are trying to develop Indian agriculture to more precise, more high productivity, higher incomes and all that, have to really think about it and find solutions. From small, we give one, use optimal dose based on soil test. Now, here I give you a corollary. WHO has asked all the countries in the world, increase test of coronavirus, increase test of people, test, and test. The same thing applies to your soil in agriculture. Do more tests. If you do a seasonal test before you start the crop, which is very unlikely in India, you do a better crop planning and fertilizer response you get. At least do test every year, one time a year. You know your soil. How many of us are doing this? How many farmers are actually taking? Governments have departments. They have taken this into notice, and they have given lots of low cost testing methodologies and all that. But how many farmers are actually testing their soil every season before they start planting? Before you start planting, you must have a plan, the fertilizer plan. Promotion, and this is what most surprising thing to me. Many people feel if you are using chemical fertilizers, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash units, you can forget about the cow and the cow dung. And that has created havoc in this country. Organic manure is required in the soil. You saw the organic carbon graph I showed you. It's impossible. You cannot grow crop only with chemical inputs, chemical nutrients. You need to have, these also contain chemical nutrients ultimately, but they add a roughage, they add carbon to the soil. That's very important. And then go for promotion of water soluble fertilizer. That is connected to fertigation. Water soluble fertilizer, small quantities, more number of splits, like 3 splits to 30 splits, or 4 splits to 45 splits, as you will see as I go along. And promotion need-based micronutrients. How do you know the need? The need is only by soil analysis. And that's one area where we are lagging behind. Many people, when they do the testing, they test only NPK, maximum calcium and magnesium. Testing for micronutrients is very important for cropping, especially at this stage of Indian soils. Many of them we don't even know. Many of them have extremely poor content of micronutrients. And there's no other way. Don't wait for the crop to show that something is deficient, and some expert comes and wrongly diagnose it, and you apply the wrong one. It's also possible. I'm not questioning them. Some of the symptoms may be the same for 2 elements. I don't want to go into details on that. Okay. So you need to promote need-based micronutrients, which also comes from my number 1 point, which is soil test. Do as much soil test as possible. Now I'm coming to another aspect of fertilizer. How to apply fertilizer to the soil before planting as well as after planting the crop. We have the good old method, the only method human beings know. Take the fertilizer in the hand, throw it around, broadcasting. I know, even though it is good old and all that, even now there are so many farmers I know of, cereal farmers, for example, are using that. You test the flat rice, and this man a basket in his left hand and taking with the right hand some fertilizer and spreading onto the flat water in a rice field. He is satisfied because he thinks that he applied, he spent money, he applied fertilizer. But from the story so far, you would have understood that fertilizer applied is not going to improve much. They do a certain percentage, 30-35%. Then we have a placement. When the tractor mounted equipments came, fertilizer applicator came, they go in a dry soil with the plant standing and then apply by the side of the crop rows, which is a placement, which is actually far better than broadcasting. Then we have the foliar feeding. In certain cases, foliar feeding, even during conventional agriculture, applications is applied. But now it is valuable, but only for correcting the deficiencies. In certain cases where soil cannot provide or mineral is available in the soil, but because of alkali conditions or pH conditions, it is not, plant cannot absorb. In such cases, that's where foliar feeding comes in there. Then we have through irrigation water, which is fertigation. Now, this is just a drawing. If you see the first one in this picture, the surface irrigation is applied to banana, and then fertilizer is already applied before irrigation, and that's how the fertilizer molecules, which I just put the color figures to show you, Most of them are concentrated around that, and some of them start moving along with the water movement. Please understand, in a dry soil, fertilizer cannot, from the point of application, cannot move anywhere. They will just stay there. So the farmers know that, so they apply water up there. So that's what it's up. Now, many people have been with the drip irrigation for so many years now. So initially years, I remember interacting with farmers. We give drip irrigation systems, they use for irrigating, they understand that. And they don't use the fertilizer tank or the venturi. They don't fertilize using that. And it took some time. Now, a lot of people, a lot more people are doing that. A lot more farmers are doing that. They learned that. Then they apply fertilizer on the surface of the soil and drip irrigation. Even there, what happens is that the fertilizer moves a bit with irrigation, which is coming later, but the distribution in the rhizosphere, in the root mass, what you call, is not uniform. It becomes localized. Then you have the final one, drip fertigation, where water carries small doses of fertilizer, so much so that the water is not highly salinated. That's a very important point. You will learn it later as I go ahead. And then as the water and the ions move around the soil, it goes uniformly and reaches everywhere. Because the system is designed and irrigation schedules are planned and the emitting rates are well planned, so much so that the water reaching the profile will only be restricted to the roots where the roots are there. If anybody is wrongly doing excess irrigation, that's a different matter. In real sense of drip irrigation, it doesn't, water is not allowed to go beyond the absorbing root zone. So that is where the fertilizer ions also get spread. This is the best possible soil, water, fertilizer pattern we can create. So irrigate with a drip, also sprinkler for certain crops, fertigate with them. That's the point. Now, this is just to go a bit into the theory. See, for example, there is some root somewhere, some fertilizer ions are located. Nitrogen can be taken by roots even if they are 20 millimeter away from the roots. Because mobility in the soil with the water of nitrogen, in normal case, is higher. When it comes to potassium, it is lesser. It should be 7.5 millimeter close. Beyond that, it's not going to be taken up by the crop, by the root. When it comes to magnesium, very heavy ion, 5 millimeter. And look at phosphorus. One of the laziest ion in the soil is phosphorus. It refused to move. At least in bullock carts, when the bulls get tired, they lie, and you can see the owner trying to kick, make sound, and all that to get it up and move. But phosphorus, you can't do all this in the soil unless it is 1 millimeter close to the root has absorption. But to some extent, rhizobia works in this, acts as a media to take the fertilizer be from a distance and bring to the thing, if provided your crop root system and rhizobia are in a type of symbiotic relationship. But that apart, in the normal cases, that's what is happening. So there is a difference between the rate of movement of fertilizer nutrient ions in the soil, and you can't do anything about that. If you add water already pre-added, like in fertigation, make a solution, wherever the water moves, the ions are automatically carried. But if you put fertilizer in one side, get the water later, they go, the concentrations will be difficult to control, you don't have any control, and their movement of that surface water through the soil profile, you don't have any control either. That is why when we talk about drip irrigation, it is not the plastic tubes we are talking about and the drippers. We are talking about the precision required for applying water and fertilizer so that the receptive roots will be happy to have them close to it. Now we come to water-soluble fertilizers. Obviously, fertilizers for fertigation, that's a heading. They have to be water-soluble. There's no doubt about it, no question about it. Now to start with this technology, we used to have liquid or fluid fertilizers. That is fertilizer elements already dissolved, and put in large containers, and you take to the farm and you apply at a rate which is decided for the crop. But these fertilizers, they were the original liquid fertilizers, but they were difficult to carry, to transport to the farm, wherever you are making it from the factory. Then you have suspension fertilizers. They are fluid fertilizers. They have solid suspended onto the fluid. These are not suitable in a way because the suspended ones will block your emitters and the entire systems. So finally, we have water soluble solid fertilizer. You can carry 20 gram, 1 gram, half a kilo in a bag, go to the drip system. If it is a fertilizer tank, make a solution in a bucket. The proportions, etc., are given by the manufacturer of the fertilizer as well as by the system provider of the drip. You can put that solution in the fertilizer tank, or if it's a venturi, put that bucket under the venturi tube, suction tube. You can get it down. So this is probably the easiest. Technology has become easier and easier for field application. Now, when you need to have certain requirements for the fertilizers. Any fertilizer cannot be used for fertigation. The first one is that high nutrient content in solution. When you're dissolving a small quantity of fertilizer in the solution, in the water, the nutrient content should be high. This is ensured in these specialized water soluble fertilizers. They are high solubility under field conditions. In a limited volume of water, you can put larger weight or larger volume of fertilizer. So that's what solubility. I'll show you solubilities later. Then you have rapid dilution in the irrigation water. Is easier. You cannot put the fertilizer and wait for 2 hours to get the dilution done. Farmers don't use it. It's an instant solution they need. And main thing is that these fertilizers, when it is applied to the water, they should never clog the emitters because the purpose is defeated then. Okay. So you should not have very insoluble material in the fertilizer, and any conditioning agent which may precipitate, which may form froth or flakes should not be there. That is all characters associated with the fertilizer you are buying. And some of these fertilizers should be compatible with other fertilizers because there is a chance that you would be applying 2 at a time. You may have compatible with irrigation water. I will come back to that point. The irrigation water, its problem, how it affects the fertilizer, does not result in extreme. The soils are already in bad. I was giving you an example of Indian soils. You have alkaline soils, pH than 7 soils. For example, in Madurai, some of the sugarcane fields, you can up to 7, 9, 8. Okay, what do you do with them? You have to work. And of course, fertilizer that when in the water, the solution should not corrode material. What is good when soluble fertilizers good? So the first point, most important point, and it should be 100% water, and the solution should be pH low, acidic, because the soil has got a problem, correct, and it is maintained pH, and the nutrient should be ready available. Put in this already the sound started being around. And another thing is that when these water soluble do not in sodium, which the soil some have been grown. Guys, then you application possible. You are applying one quantity, and the precise application system is well designed. Carries water usually from to the other. Guys are also and using small quantities and getting fixed in the soil, either station or chemical, because you are a small quantity ionized water, and that is option. Because of the very small or large day, the deterioration which we content. But most important there and there about uh, physiological and the physiological demand of the crop, change the quantity as well as you can the mineral content of the product. And then you can out percent efficiency because plant uptake will increase. Normal fertilizers are urea for nitrogen, ammonium nitrate, which is now not in use for other reasons, ammonium sulfate and nitric acid. And for phosphate, you have monoammonium phosphate, phosphoric acid, and monopotassium phosphate. Then you have potassium chloride, which is MOP, muriate of potash, which is only the white color MOP is recommended, and it is water soluble, not the pink color which you normally buy. Potassium nitrate and potassium sulfate. These are the main water soluble fertilizers available. Now, as I told you, when these fertilizers have a pH which is less than 7, most of them are acidic. Urea, of course, in pure urea, when you get about 5.8, but many of the urea samples you get in China is that the pH may be up to 6. So if anybody disagrees with me, this is the reason. They contain dirt, they contain other things. Now, ammonium sulfate, which is very highly acidic fertilizer, 5.5, we usually recommend it for all crops in the central Indian alkaline belt. MAP, monopotassium phosphate, 4.9, monopotassium phosphate, 5.5, monoammonium phosphate, 4.9, and calcium nitrate, which is 5.8. So pHs are all under control. They're acidic pHs. Now we have phosphoric fertilizer, phosphoric acid, 2.6, one of the very good fertilizer. It also cleans when applied instead of acid injection into the drip system for declogging, okay, which you do. If you are using phosphoric acid for fertigation, that process, it becomes 2 in 1. The other MKP and MAP, as I was saying. Then you have potash fertilizers, potassium chloride, 46%, and it has a pH 7. Why? The best is potassium nitrate and potassium sulfate. It has got a lower pH, 3.7, and MKP, which is 5.5. Now, many people ask this question. That's why I put this section. What is the interaction of any fertilizer, supposed to be water-soluble fertilizer, with water? Let me have a glass of water. Now, the places where we have problems are when the water is hard. That is, its EC is very high. There are places. The TDS, the dissolved content of salts in the water is high. That's what I have written, chemical aspects of fertigation, interaction with irrigation water. That's the first interaction before it even in the soil. So you have a high content calcium or magnesium, bicarbonate, and high pH water. There's a chance that some of the fertilizers, especially phosphorus fertilizer, sulfate fertilizer, will get precipitated back when you are making the solution. And calcium may form calcium carbonate. Just like that. So these are not, but you don't worry about it. There's a way to do this. So recommended choose fertilizers have an acid reaction because water is saline, water is alkaline, high pH. So you need to have a acid-based fertilizer, like phosphoric acid, monoammonium phosphate, which has got both nitrogen and phosphorus, potassium phosphate, which has got potassium and safer to use in hard water. And in such cases, we are also not recommending urea to be used because of some of these problems. Because the pH of the available samples of urea has got a relative higher pH than the pure urea I showed you. Then even after that, after fertilizing or before fertilizing, before fertigation, you can inject acid into the system and then remove all that is what has been precipitated before and flush it through the drippers and apply fertigation. That's also possible. When you have calcium and magnesium containing fertilizer, you have to be extremely careful in the concentration, which of course the experts coming visiting your field will tell you how to apply, how much to apply. Now let us take another side type of water, saline water. There are places where water is saline. Please understand, alkalinity is high pH, while salinity is high, will have sodium or chloride, high chloride concentration. So they are different actually. Because you can have alkalino saline water also. That's a different issue. Adding fertilizers, inorganic salts, increases the EC. Well, EC is already up. It is 2 to 3 decicements per meter square. In other words, EC is more than 2 or 3. And into that, you are adding inorganic salt. Fertilizers are inorganic salts. What will happen? The EC of the solution will even damage the crop. So you have to be careful about it. That's it. Now it is recommended in such. What crop you are growing in saline area, first of all. That is what the first caution comes in. You cannot grow a certain crop like strawberry in a saline soil. Even banana sometimes in a high saline soil you cannot grow because the crop is not even happy with the soil. Forget about application of fertilizer. So that's the crop sensitivity to salinity. A lot of information is available. You ask, we can tell you. Choose fertilizers with a low salt index. Even this water, most of the water soluble fertilizers, when it is manufactured, they test the salt index. What is the salt index? That is, if you add a fertilizer, a certain quantity, into the soil solution, finally, water comes to a soil solution. It should not increase the osmotic pressure of the soil solution by the presence of the fertilizer. If it increases high, then that has a high salt index. The standard is given is actually sodium nitrate. It has got a 100 as it's taken as the standard. And for example, our urea will come about 104. Okay. Like potassium sulfate, very good fertilizer, very low salt load, comes only 46, which is far less than even the standard. So in such cases, knowing that water is saline, the fertilizer chosen should have a low salt index. So you don't make the salinity worse, you only try to improve the salinity. That's the principle. And then another thing, that water, according to plant needs, and also you periodically flush the salts out of the system. This has actually been done in many of the saline cultivation areas. Now, this crop susceptibility to salinity in the field, opal is huge buffering agent. Any non-conventional excess things, the soil has an ability to remove, absorb, and keep away from the plant. This is called buffering. Something excess, it just apart. But when you do greenhouse planting, where you are using aquaponics in water media, or you are using aquaponics in artificial media and all that, what happens? The buffering capacity is not there. So there is obviously saline condition in cultivation, and even there you have to use low salt index fertilizers. Now we look at the solubilities. If you see that okay, solubility is something, how many grams of a salt of a fertilizer will dissolve without having anything, any sedimentation or any precipitate in the water. But it changes with the temperature. So you have to be, the solubility in a tropical country like India will be higher because we are experiencing higher temperature than in a temperate country in Europe, for example. So the temperature has to be noted. I have clearly given it's a 30 degrees centigrade. That's the normal ambient temperature. So you can dissolve up to 570 grams of urea in 1 liter water. That is why in our fertigation recommendation, when we work with farmers, we say the reverse. We say 1 kg urea, you take it, and 2 liter water, add it, you get a solution. 100% dissolved solution. That's what it is. Calcium nitrate, very highly soluble, 1,500 gram per solubility, like that. If you look at it, single superphosphate, which I put in red in the slide, 170. Single superphosphate, in a way of speaking, is not even soluble at all when you are putting a lot of superphosphate in a large bucket of water. So it's not actually advised at all for fertigation. Diammonium phosphate is DAP, your favorite fertilizer, DAP, is not recommended for fertigation. If anybody by mistake did it, they would have suffered their system having problems, or not even suction that taking place. Potassium nitrate, potassium sulfate, these are all water soluble ones. Now what we call is a standard operating procedure, do a jar test. Many farmers sometimes even call me on my mobile and ask, sir, I got a new fertilizer from a supplier, some shop. It is white in color. It is granular, but it is powdery also, rough feeling. Can I use for fertigation? This is what it is. The question used to be. Now, in all such cases, even if you don't get a call also, if you get a new fertilizer, before you venture into fertigation procedure, you do a jar test. You take a jar. If you don't have a jar, you take an empty bottle of Aquafina or Bisleri bottle. You put a spoon of fertilizer and add your irrigation water to fill it and shake it. Then look at the solution. If the solution has got any precipitate which comes to the top, or look for fibers moving around up and down the entire water, or anything floating, which is no weight but it is floating on the top, or totally it became turbid, like in the rainy season the rivers become turbid when the water and the mud comes from the hills, turbidity. Or some fertilizers will give a sediment at the bottom of that bottle. You look, there will be a whitish ash color, something coming at the bottom. Or throughout it's a milk color or murkiness, which is not the milk color, some other color, but it is dirty looking. What it means is that if within 1 or 2 hours these things develop, any of these things develop, that material given to you as water soluble fertilizer is not suitable at all for fertigation. That's the test. If you have 2 fertilizers at the same time, you have to do this jar test or the bottle test separately, and then solutions you mix it and find out whether anything by mixing also creates any of this turbidity or fibers or precipitate. Not use it. You have to have 100% solution, complete dissolved. But your solution can have a color based on the salt you added. What fertilizer salt? Color has no problem, but turbidity has got a problem. Now I briefly touch upon fertigation equipments. As I said, my colleagues in Jain irrigation have explained it very well. Normal, simple 1 acre, 2 acre farmers will have a system. This is of course the drip system. You are applying, you have here the well, then the pump, you have the hydrocyclone filter to remove sand, and then the water goes to the sand filter if algae is there to remove. And before that sand filter entry, there's a small thing written Venturi. If you look at the slide very closely, that is the injection device. It's the simplest device used on the used in small farms for injecting fertilizer, where you bring the water in a bucket, make the solution in that bucket, and then put the suction tube of the Venturi and supply to the system. This is the simplest. Now, these are the Venturis. In Jain irrigation, we have from 3/4 inch to about 2 inch, 2.5 inch Venturis available. This is the way, it's a very crude way of showing some color solution going up. You can see by adjusting the valve, which is hidden in this picture, you can create a vacuum at that red arrow shown in on the top of the Venturi, and suction will start when you create a suction. It's exactly like you take a bottle of Coca-Cola, you put a straw and you suck it up. That is the way it works, but it works by manipulating the hydraulic pressure which is coming with the water in the system. That's a very simple, anybody can operate, and less costly also. Then we have the fertilizer tank here. You prepare a solution and put in the tank, and when you work with the throttle valve, water will, from the main line, water will come to the tank carry the fertilizer containing water and go to the system back again through the outlet. So fertilizer slowly moves with the water. This is what these two systems are the one which you see commonly in all farmers' fields in India. But then when you have large farms and you need to do all these operation, and also for climate controlled cultivation, you need to do the operation in large scale and more precision. And in such cases, you can have what we call a Jain NutriCare, which has lots of facilities. Now, because this is also been dealt with in the previous webinar, I'm not going to the details. These are basically a series of ventures which will take the water solution of fertilizer from tanks, pre-prepared solution from the tanks, and supply to the system. Very simple. It also has a checking device for the electrical conductivity and the pH of the solution. That is where I said in greenhouse cultivation and large climate control structures, where your precision on the EC and pH has to be extreme, because you are growing some very high valuable crops, but they are very sensitive to small changes in pH or EC. Then you can have these sort of systems. Here the EC and pH is monitored, and there is one more device. If the pH is not desirable, the system itself can take required amount of acid and put into the running solution. And here is where the automation comes in. So NutriCare and the automation system can work together. Now, basically, NutriCare is the fertigation machine, we call it. It is targeted to perform both irrigation and fertigation in climate controlled cultivation, like in greenhouses and in large open fields. And it has other applications. And basically, it's a bypass device. Water is passed from the main running into the system, such the fertilizer goes back to the system. That's what it is. It injects the nutrients and acid to the main line using venturi pumps. But this is required, as I said, large management, large farms or climate controlled, high precision requiring farms. Now, the major topic, you may be thinking that why I keep talking like this, because fertigation is such a complex science. So it has several aspects. Now I'm coming to the software part. It is not so soft though, the fertigation scheduling exercise. What is meant by scheduling? You have fertilizer in your hand, you have an irrigation system working in the field. The farmer should know when I should apply a fertilizer, how much I should apply, and how often I should apply. This is the plan. That plan is pre-made for him by experts in the company, and we give it to him the fertilizer schedules in what we call the fertigation schedules in very simple language, as you can see some of the following slide, what I'm going to show you. Now, to do this for us, for a person like me, we need a lot of information beforehand to prepare the plan. Crop growing cycle, what crop, where, which is the planting date, and how many days it is going to grow. What are the different stages of developmental stages coming as it grows? In a cereal, for example, when does the boot stage come? When does the flag leaf will come? When does the tiller start? These sort of information we require. Crop growing cycle with the development stages and the duration. It's true with horticulture crops also. How the crop growth cycle is influenced by local climate. This is very important. Suppose I grow a particular variety of tomato, say that in Tamil Nadu. Then I take this variety to Punjab and try to grow there. Very soon you will find that their growth rate, developmental stages, everything changes. Because crops react. The only thing affecting crop growth rate when water, fertilizer, everything is sufficient is what we call the accumulated heat on a day. It is not temperature. When I say 40 degree, 20 degree, people misunderstand. It's actually what we call physiology. We calculate the day degrees. There is an equation for that. I'm not going to go into the details of that. And only if sufficient day degrees are accumulated, a crop will change from one vegetative stage to the next vegetative stage, or from vegetative stage to the reproductive stage. You might be finding it out very easily in the story of mango. For the last several years, if you have been experiencing mango, or you are looking at mango flowering time, you would have seen a shift has happened. Mango from you are 10 years back, or mango 20 years back, and mango now. They are not flowering on the same calendar date, not even the calendar month, not even the calendar week. They are pushed. Okay, this can be connected to climate change in the larger scenario and all that. I'm not going to go into that. So the accumulated degrees of heat on each day will affect the growth rate. That we should know when we are going to make the fertigation plan. Then amount of each nutrient required at each stage. This is also very difficult. We may know how much nutrient is required for a crop like banana or a crop like sugarcane, but at each stage, what is the required? Then only you can have a matching application schedule. Then nutrient removal of the crop from the soil. This is also important. We do everything right, and then we find out that some of the nutrients we apply to the soil, even through fertigation, the crop is not removing it because it found out something else is happening. This you will find out as I go along how these are applied to make fertigation schedule. Now, a good fertilizer program takes into account the soil test. Again, we are coming to square one. I started saying, I even cited the WHO recommendation for coronavirus. Do test and test and test, like that. Test and test and test your soil. We need to know what is available in the soil, then only we can add more. Crop growth and development and irrigation system, we should know. A well-designed fertigation schedule and its effective management by the farmer. It will meet the crop according to its differential need at different stages of growth. And you get, that's what precision farming is. If you can make that happen, that's precision farming. You get high yield and high income. Okay, some data in India, basically the problem is that many of the crops, we don't have sufficient data on this. It's not a criticism, it's a fact. Anybody who's doing a fertigation planning, one of the stumble stone or one of the blockade is actually lack of information on particular crop. Now, for example, some of them are available. Tandon 1993 and the Indian Fertilizer Association, they have given, for example, cane, if you want to get 132 tons per hectare, which is a very low yield actually. We are creating 250 tons per hectare, by the way. We are getting. You need 161 kilogram of nitrogen per hectare. That much has to be removed by the crop, not in the applied. Please understand. This is removed by the crop. Crop has to take it. And potassium 205. This sort of data will guide us to understand the volumes of fertilizer required for a successful, high productive crop. That's all it is. But even this, we may not have for all the crops analyzed and then put in the literature. Now, this is a classic diagram of the nutrient absorption found in any crop physiology and even plant physiology books. It has a value, even though it's an old publication. By the way, old sometimes can be most valuable. Here, you look at the crop growth stage, vegetate, just a general thing only, not a specific crop. You have the vegetative growth stage, you have the starting, then vegetative, the flowering, the full production of the fruits or whatever, grains. Then the harvest happens. So initially less potash, high nitrogen, and then P2O5 more or less slightly high during the vegetative, then it tapers down. High potassium comes later in the production, that is the fruit or grain formation time. So this gives us some idea about generally how the crop takes nutrient and utilizes during its crop cycle. Now we go both. Cuvette using water culture. It used to be called hydroponics, used to be called liquid culture, water culture at one time. Now, because commercialized hydroponics even lost the definition actually. In 1985, this is the data on tomato control condition, that is greenhouse tomato. You see the here again, You towards the harvest, you need more, or before that is flowering and fruiting time, you need more potassium in the system for tomato to form very high yield and quality food. Later also I will show you this in a different way. Vegetative stage, transplanting stage, tomato seedlings, transplanting stage, requirement is less. So what happens in a general agriculture, conventional agriculture, is that either before transplanting or immediately after transplanting, we apply masses of fertilizer, NPK, right into the soil. The crop is not ready. It's exactly like a baby, an infant, try to be fed with the solid food when it is only 2 months, 3 months old. That situation happens with infants. We are very careful. We are not so careful about our crops. So we think that it is applied in the soil, it is available, so it will take whenever it wants. It doesn't. It fixes, it moves with water, it goes away from the roots. This is the message. Fertilizer, large quantity you apply to the soil, irrespective of the time of the crop need, is wasted. Now, this is a wonderful study. This study is one of the rarest, and I spent a lot of time locating such a study. Here you will see the maize growth from the seed planting to final reproductive stage 5 when the cobs are formed. And here the days are given, how many days each the VE, emergent stage, V2 is actually 2-leaf stage, V5, vegetative 5-leaf stage, like that. That's the way, it doesn't matter. Along with that, what is given is the number of days to that stage. 7 days, 20 days, 30 days, 45 days, finally 110 days, and beyond 110 days, you are harvesting it. And here, percentage of water taken by the crop, that's more important, is given. Okay, we are not talking about water today. I'm talking about NPK. So here, the NPK requirement is given. This is a beautiful thing. Now, using this, if I am making, by the way, this study is done in Australia for an Australian soil. Please understand. Now, similar study, unless you do it for your own soil or your own region, this cannot be immediately used. But at least it will provide a guidance to a person like me who is preparing fertigation schedules on to introducing and how much to introduce of each nutrient at each stage. That's what the purpose of this. This sort of studies, I tell you, by the time I complete patient presentation, you will understand that there are so many fertile areas for research is available. Students and university professors can work together and we have a very, very fertile field in fertigation for research. For example, rice potassium uptake, another one. Because I actually use it for the rice fertigation schedules which I provide to our farmers, drip farmers. Now look at here, about 30 days till tillering, the use of potassium is very little, very little. You take percentage of the total. It is less than 25%. But the moment boot stage and flower exertion, flower comes out, anthesis happens, and the grain is filling, the milk and the hard and all those stages, you see it goes about to 75, almost 75% of the K is required at that time. It is given total. I use the red line to explain to you. You can have details later. Basically what happens is that fertigation is a plan where you apply the nutrient only when the crop needs it. In conventional, you apply based on some calendar times recommended by institutions and universities and panjangas and books. You apply. That's the difference. That difference we have to make. And I want to see these recommendations becoming standardized, tested in Indian soils, and used by Indian farmers. Then we are all going to do precision farming, maintaining soil health. Now, this is our recommendation, which I haven't prepared for a rice farmer. We introduce potash, for example, just to look at the potash only. Between 26 to, that is 30 days, growth is over. There, the nitrogen has gone up from 32% to 54%. I started applying a bit of potash, 25%. But maximum potash is coming from 75 days to about 90 days time. So we could make that one. Okay, now you ask me where the scientific basis. Scientific basis is my accumulated knowledge of going through all these things, and also my knowledge about rice growth. That's what it is required for people to make this order. Now, A lot of people can do. Crop physiology is actually a tool. It's an applied tool where you get all this information you can do, and the literature will give you crop specific information. Now, this is the basis of scheduling. Finding out which nutrient, how much is required at each stage, growth and the developmental stage. Then you can apply according to that. Fine. You apply in a daily or once in 2 days. Farmers need not know this background science. Farmers have to be given standardized, ready to apply fertigation schedules in the form of cards. That's what we do in cane irrigation. You can ask the sugarcane farmers of Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, and all that. See that they have in their file for that particular crop fertigation schedules filed by several years back for the crops they grow. Now, this is to show you the total elements. Now, this is the schedule, the card. Here, very simple. From fertigation day 7, 9, 11, alternate days in this case, how much urea to be applied, how much monoammonium phosphate should be applied. Monoammonium phosphate, because the basal dose is already given while land preparation. Initially, there is no monoammonium phosphate. It starts around 27th day only. Then it ends around 75th day in the slide here. Okay. Then you have, on the other hand, white potash. Rice requires the white potash. You saw that towards the end. You need to apply more and more. It starts around 41st, 45, 41 or 45 days, and it goes till about 97 days for a 110, 115 day crop. So this is what the scheduling actually. The knowledge which is already available and your experience with the crop, and we had to actually visualize. If somebody says, I want for a very strange crop, for example, not so common crop in India, durian. Okay, I have to know the durian stages of growth and both the dry matter accumulation and then developmental changes, when the flower will come, when the fruit will come, and how many days the fruit will grow. This has to be matched with the fertilizer which durian requires. This is what it has been, and this is what fertigation schedule in the real sense means and the basis. Now, for sugarcane, for example, initially the green tower is high in this graph, which is nitrogen. We need more nitrogen up to about 105 days. You see, sugarcane has got a story. In conventional agriculture, many of the sugarcane experts will agree with me now. Many of them have changed their attitude also, their thinking also. They used to recommend applying for all the fertilizer in first 90 days. What happens the crop afterwards? That is why they are getting only 20 tons, 22 tons per acre. While my farmer will get 100 tons per acre, 75 tons, 80 tons, 100 tons per acre. That I'm making the difference. And he believes me now. He also did not believe me originally when I said it. So that's what this is actually by a company called Duclos, which is actually a offshoot of IFA. They studied this. The daily uptake rate is only what is shown in this. You see, in the first 31 to 60 days, sugarcane takes up to 1.4 kg per hectare nitrogen. But it hardly takes 0.4 kg of phosphate. But towards the end, you see the long red histogram. Around after about 274 days, when the cane is maturing, the cane is taking 1.4 up to 1.5 kgs of potash per hectare. That's the time it requires because the cane is maturing. Sugar is being loaded to the cane. So that difference is now beautifully you can fertilize it. So people who were originally saying 90 days you stop it, maximum 120 days. I remember my earlier days with fertigation and my struggle with the people who are actually controlling the farmers. They will not allow me to go beyond this, even though all the science is there even at that time. Now they understood, most of the farmers understood. We have so many people who are harvesting 100 tons, 80 tons, 90 tons per acre. Not per hectare, per acre. And this is the major reason for this. So you have sugarcane needs more nitrogen in initial stages and more of potash towards the end. Now that's what the schedule has been formed based on that. Now you will see potato. Potato has got several growth stages. You have a sprouting stage, vegetative, tuber initiation, tuber bulking, and maturation. And the schedule is being made based on that. And now you have, there's one difference. When you grow a crop open and when you grow the similar species of the crop, I won't say variety, inside a poly house or a greenhouse or a climate control system, you have a difference because tomato open field 80 tons per hectare, but you are producing 100 to 200 tons in a protected cultivation. So your uptake rate also changes. This is beautiful data actually from the Indian Fertilizer Association. It takes instead of 80 to 100 to produce 80 tons, it takes 250, 3.35.2 and 415K. But in the protected cultivation, it is almost 200 to 600, 44, 88, higher quantity because you are making the crop to produce more. You need it. And also, it is in a protected environment, in a way of speaking. You are making the environment more conducive for its growth, not the open compared to the open land, which means it needs more food. In grain irrigation, we are not only using the literature of the past, we do research. I personally get involved in a lot of research in the area of fertigation, and some of them are our own, some of them in collaboration with the universities for a student to get a PhD. I'll give you some of these examples. For example, here, fertigation for a cashew, variety VRI3. It has the recommended dose is 450, 150, and 150 gram per tree per year in Tamil Nadu. Now, if you look at it, is a PhD research. The research is completed. And even with the fertilizer, 75% of the recommended, you produce the highest yield of 900 kilogram per acre of cashew nut. Where do you get that? So here, there is an interesting thing. If you do fertigation properly, there was a general feeling that it should reduce the volume of fertilizer you are applying, the quantity of fertilizer you are adding. This is actually happening. This is one example, but I'm not saying that it will happen to every crop. I'll show you contrary to this also. But in cashew, it happened. It was 75% of recommended fertilizer in a fertigation gives you 900, but the same fertilizer applied by soil will give you only 250 gram of cashew. By the way, this is a repeated study, 2 years data. Which means from the recommended, you can reduce the fertilizer by 25%, and solid evidence is there. Now, there is not only that, there are two varieties, two varieties. Here, the very impressive result in that study has come. The blue histogram shows the yield under fertigation, and the red one, yield under normal soil application. See the difference. So fertigation is impactful. You don't have to apply the whole of the fertilizer recommended. You can still get much higher yield, and that is precision farming. Pomegranate, same. In pomegranate, when we did the farm, this is actually a Jain research farm in Tamil Nadu. You see this, with the soil application of the full dose of fertilizer, you get about 6 tons per hectare, just over 6 tons. But with 50% of the fertilizer applied, with fertigation, you are getting 18 tons. It's actually harvested. Beautiful result and beautiful information in terms of soil health, in terms of fertilizer economics, in terms of farmers' income. That is why what fertigation does. But you have to painfully conduct experiments and prove this point. Till that time, nobody will believe you. But if you can also increase the fertilizer, see whether it makes any benefit. No, the histograms are smaller. With 100, the full percentage, it's only 10 tons, 10 or 11 tons it is coming. So fertigation, when it is done properly in the precision farming, you can reduce the recommended doses of fertilizer. But your schedule has to be perfect. Pomegranate, not only the quantity of pomegranate harvested, look at the aerial quality, the pink flesh inside the pomegranate fruit which you eat, that is aerial. The 50% gives you 16 milligram of anthocyanin, the color which gives it, in the aerial per 100 gram of aerial. while the soil application gives only less than 14. So, which is an important information. You need higher quality. Fertigation helps you in reducing the fertilizer, increasing the yield, and increasing the quality of the fruit also. There are many, many win-win situations here. It's not only win-win-win. You can have many wins. Yes, you may think that I'm passionate about fertigation. Yes, I am. You can think that, and that is the way, because this is something, is a science, and when it is packed into a form of a technology, it should be used by maximum people and then get the benefit. It has a lot of pluses, which we will list later. Now, processing tomato, which is another trial we did with the previous two were done with the Tamil Nadu Agriculture University collaboration. Students work with our farm. This is YSR Horticulture University, Tadepalligudam in Andhra Pradesh. Two students worked with me, and two of tomato, and both are processing tomato. Look at here. Here, there's a difference. The normal recommended fertilizer, which is given, which is 150, of that is 150 nitrogen, 25 kg recommendation. So what we did was that we took 80% of that, we took 100%, we took 120% also. Here, the trend is we are under fertilizing for processing variety. They are profusely flowering, very high yielding ones in the field. So they need more food. They may be getting, because fertilizer studies are not done on those new varieties, they may be getting the recommendation of our old varieties of tomato, which they are using it because nobody went and revised the fertigation. It's just a possibility. So it shows that it needs more. Your yield is still high. See, for example, we now gone up to 140 tons per hectare when the fertilizer is 20% more. So that's also possible. So it is not always pressure-less. If a crop is profusely yielding and newer varieties are coming, which has got a higher yield potential, their demand of fertilizer also is more. That's what it is proving. It's not proving anything else. We also looked at the lycopene content, the color, the material which gives the color to your tomato sauce. No, and I didn't mean the artificial color, the tomato's own color, lycopene, milligram per 100 gram. Look at that. For Alankar, it is increasing. For a variety Alankar, the high content, 120%, gives you better. But up now, if you increase 120 fertilizer, the quality goes down a bit, lycopene reduces. So these are sort of information we are generating. Now all this will help in your ultimate planning of fertilizer schedule. That's the point I'm making. Generally speaking, from the conventional to water soluble, you increase the efficiency of the fertilizers. Nitrogen goes up to 90, 95, phosphatic to 90, and potassic to 90 to 95. It's actually data from some research done in Tamil Nadu Agriculture University. I'm just using it to explain the fact that fertilizer use efficiency increases both for all the elements N, P, and K when you can change from the soil application to the fertilizer application through fertigation. You have fertigation and on yield enhancement. A lot of fruit crops have, even all of them have yield increased. Like 6 tons of pomegranate, 9 tons on the 5th year, 2.5 tons of mango, 12th year. Here I'm getting for 6.5 tons on the 5th year. And of course, it's just another added technology for dry density. That's the great thing. But mango yielded faster. Mango yielded that many crops are here. Now, all this long story which I have been talking to you simply means adoption of fertilization would result in high fertilizer use efficiency. That's what we want. Every pie a farmer spends from his pocket, he should get the maximum return. It comes from water use efficiency, it comes from fertilizer use efficiency, it can come from insecticide use efficiency, or whatever efficiency. That is what to lead us for safe agriculture production as well as health of people and health of environment, health of soil. The efficiencies would increase. Now, additionally, it has been experimentally proved that some 20-25% of fertilizer can be saved, which you saw. Research in pomegranate, cashew, banana, mango, rice, tomato, turmeric, and chili have validated some of these findings. Tomato, you saw there is a variety of different tomato can yield further higher, provided you give more fertilizer. So that's why I'm just summarizing it. High yield, lower fertilizer use, and high fertilizer efficiency. That's the key. Now, coming to the reality from the playing around with the science a bit. The reality, farmers are finding it difficult to adopt fertigation, and it's my own observations. Somebody can question me on this. Number one factor is non-availability of water-soluble fertilizers in the rural areas where the farms are. Every farmer cannot go to Hyderabad city or Coimbatore city and buy water. Fertilizer supply has to penetrate into the rural areas, especially fertilizers. Conventional fertilizer traders, they do not have any knowledge about water soluble fertilizers. I'm not saying that. Many of them don't even know something called water soluble fertilizer is available. It should be advised to the farmers to use it, because many farmers, where do they get the fertilizer recommendation? From the trader. Timely supply of these fertilizers are not reaching the farmers. You can't wait when the fruit is about the boot stage and the flag leaf has come out, the panicle is coming out, and you cannot go around and find out where I can get the water soluble potash. The cost of water soluble, that's another major issue. The cost is high because it is not manufactured in India, it is imported, and the import duty is passed on to the farmers. That we all know. And many of the farmers say that you cannot afford. That is one of the reasons when we started fertigation some 20 years back as a major thing. And with the arrival of APMIP, the boosting this, we realized that let us do only urea and potash. Right? Because both are conventional fertilizers available. Do not load the farmer with the burden of going for water soluble fertilizer. But now farmers who understood this, it has a benefit, they go into any extent and buy water soluble fertilizer. That's the beauty about it. So in starting trouble, it was there because everybody thought it is too much economic burden. Basically, what it is, water soluble fertilizers have to be manufactured in India to reduce the specialty fertilizers are always imported and not manufactured as well. And another thing, farmers' awareness have to be built in. Is as a company like us, Jain, with our agronomists going and meeting the farmers and our meetings, seminars, and all that, our reach is limited compared to this vast country and the large millions of farmers. So this has to come in some sort of systematic way of teaching. Interestingly, fertigation is as a science is not taught as part of agriculture or horticulture courses. Maybe last a few years it might have started, I don't know, in some limited universities. Many people do not go through this course when they pass BScs and come looking for jobs and all that. We are teaching them, just like we are teaching the farmers. So what I'm saying is that this has to become the new normal. Fertigation. All the books on agriculture science in the colleges and the intermediate, all that to be rewritten when it comes to fertilizer management, and fertigation has to be put into that so that it becomes the new normal. People do not think anything other than that. We have to come to that stage. Fertigation results in, is a sort of summary, balanced nutrition, high yield and quality, and income, of course. If to some extent fertilizer saving, lower soil and water pollution. That's an indirect benefit the society is going to get, the community is going to get, the country is going to get. And it maintains soil health. You are applying what is required. You are not applying extra to lodge into the soil and create problem. This is a sort of summary. Thank you very much for your attention. I know it was a bit long. but it's a science which has come developed over the years. So to understand the basics, we need time. Thank you very much.